Germany, and I watched him run that, and it looked like he was beaten, but that boy kept running and running, and at the last of the meters to be run, he kept gaining steadily on 3 others, and finally he passed one. Then he got the other one, and as they crossed the finish line, he was from the 7th Army, I remember the regiment he was from. He just crossed the finish line a dash ahead of the other. And he just ran. And Christians make the mistake sometimes that when we get in a tight place or a bad place or a low place, we think it's all over. There's no use trying. I'm beaten. I can't do it. I can't overcome. We hear the gospel and we say, that's just too much. That's just too much. I just can't handle that. But see, Paul said, but so run. Just keep running. But I haven't got the victory. I'm running behind. Well, keep running. Don't stop. Because he said, I fight as not one that beats there. But down in verse 25, and every man that striveth for mastery. Mastery in what? Mastery in God. Mastery in the Scriptures. Mastery in discipleship. He said, you must be temperate. That is, be balanced. Add to your knowledge temperance. Going back to 2 Peter, add to your knowledge temperance. Temperance, patience. See, temperance is the ability to not give up, not give over, not give in, but you're tempered to keep striving, to keep running. See, so he said, now look, he said, you be temperate in all things. Now they do it. Who are they there? The ungodly, the materialistic world. They also run races. They also compete with one another. They also try to better one another. But all they get out of it is a temporary crown of some sort in business or athletic competition. They do it to obtain a corruptible crown. In other words, it's just temporary. We'll perish. But we do it for an incorruptible. See, this mortal, 1 Corinthians 15, but this mortal, it must put on immortality. This corruptible must put on incorruption. See, that's what we're doing. That's why we're running. That's why we're going to be temperate in all things. Well, we're not going to give up, back away, but we're going to practice discipleship. But he said, I therefore so run, not as uncertainty, so fight I, not as one that beat there, but I keep under my body. In other words, I the soul, I the spirit of Paul, my hand is under that Bible. That Bible has to go where my hand goes, because my hand is under it. My hand were on top of it, it would not, but it's under it. It's under it, it carries it where it wants to go, where it decides it to go. So Paul said, I keep under my body. In other words, I'm the master of my sensual, carnal self, the body, the old man. I keep under it. I don't let it master me. I am in control of it. In other words, I'm in control of it. I keep under it. And I bring it into subjection. Okay. Down you go. Close you if I decide to, because I'm the master. Well, Paul said, I, the soul, the spirit, I keep under the sensual self, and I bring it under subjection, lest by any means, after I preach to others, I myself will be a castaway from God. He'll finally cast me. He said, cast the unprofitable servant. That's what Jesus said. Cast the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of the teeth. So I don't want my body to be under me, taking me, the soul, the spirit, where it wants to go. I want to be under the sensual self and let it be brought under subjection with God's word and God's presence and His Spirit. All right, we've covered the crowns now. The top paragraph of page 86, it simply means that in each case their heads and hearts have been set on certain goals, and they attained them and were crowned. Just like in the natural, a young man decides that he wants to be a doctor and goes on to graduate. When he does, he's crowned with his diploma or degree. Okay, I'm going to always leave open for questions or comments, but what I want to do is try to intermingle page 87 a little bit with page 86, because I want to cover things I think that are pertinent to your interest. And number 232 on page 86 just backs up what I said in 229 above it. Sanctification means to separate from the things of the world, to make free from sin. Sanctification is not a work of grace. Let me say that again. Sanctification is not a work of grace. When you are being sanctified, that is not grace. See, grace is God's unmerited favor that you receive to come to God. You don't have any works involved in coming to Jesus Christ. It's not your decision. It's not your foreknowledge. It's not your predestination of God. God chooses you, then you choose him. But he chooses you before you can choose him. Because if he does not choose you before you choose him, you would never choose him. See, you would never choose God. That's why people that do not choose God, they're not chosen of God. God must choose them before they can choose God. I was chosen of God before I ever chose him. Then by acquiescing or giving in, submitting to his will for me, I became a child of God. But it was his will. It was his foreknowledge and his predestination. So that's grace. That's grace. That's not cheap grace. That's grace. But when I'm working out my salvation with fear and trembling, that is not grace. That is discipleship. Sanctification, setting apart from the world, is working out your salvation with fear and trembling with discipleship or discipline. That's not grace. That's not grace. Someone said, I'm serving the Lord because of grace. No, I'm serving the Lord because of discipleship. If I quit disciplining myself or working out my salvation, I will not be serving the Lord. Now, if I fall into temptation, grace enters back in. See, grace was in the original coming of myself to Christ. Then grace is the safety net by his choosing that he catches me if I fall into temptation. See, not premeditated temptation, not willful temptation, not presumptuous temptation. Temptation to where I do not plan it, conceive it, dream of it, frame it, build it, fashion it, and put it together and call it temptation. So that's lust being fulfilled. But temptation is where I am overcome suddenly and I cannot see the circumstances. I do not know the preponderance of the problem, and I am tempted and drawn away. Then there's grace that can enter in. Again, by his choosing. By his choosing. God chooses. Okay, I've said a lot in 232, haven't I? A lot for you to consider. Brother Rhodes had his hand up, then Brother May.
Marlow, before you get too far.
Now they all want to hear you, so speak up.
Before you get too far away from the crowns, I need some help with a verse.
All right,
Maybe talk you into